Welcome into the New Orleans Pelicans podcast alongside Jim Eichenhofer, Wes Johnson, I'm Erin Summers. The Pelicans are wrapping up their extremely long road trip, 6 games. They're on the tail end of it with a win over Sacramento last night, taking on the Phoenix Suns Friday night, ending on a back-to-back. It's not been the nicest schedule, but we've seen some good things from this Pelicans team. Let's start with that game Thursday night against Sacramento, a 10-point win, and there was a lot of positives that you can take out of it. What are your overall thoughts, Jim?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing was just to see, that might have been the best example all season of having so many guys contribute. They had 7 guys in double-figure scoring, and I think they had 2 other guys that had 8 or 9 points as well. So, I mean, it was a good example of pretty much everyone that got in the game was able to contribute. Even Micah Peavy, who caused a little bit of an incident at the end of the game and got a little talking to with Russell Westbrook. But I mean, everyone that played helped them win the game. So I think that was the biggest thing that I took from that.
I mean, yeah. I mean, especially you want to win games you're supposed to win.
Yeah.
And this is a game you want to take care of. And regardless on the road or at home, you went out there and you played the right way. I mean, it was lapses back and forth where you can look at like, I wish we would have did this defensively. But overall, you've seen them take the punch of the Kings and really sustain the way that we played and pull out that win. So winners are winning this league.
And I think to your point too, one of the things I talked about maybe a couple of weeks ago on the podcast was that I wanted the second half of the season for the Pelicans to demonstrate that they don't belong in that group of teams at the bottom of the standings. Because
Exactly.
I remember during the trade deadline and then maybe during the All-Star break, there was a lot of discussion about here's the teams at the bottom that,
Right.
and you hear the Pelicans in there, and I kind of wince because I'm like, I don't feel like with the talent that they have and the players that they have that they should be there. So this was another example of, like you said, you're beating a team that you should beat. And I do think if you look at the record that the Pelicans have had against, Sacramento, Utah lately, Washington earlier in the season, teams like that, they have a really good record. So I heard on Zach Lowe's podcast say that if you're a fan and if you don't know anything about basketball and you just watch the Pelicans play against the bottom tier teams, you would think that they're one of the best teams in the league. So
Right.
at least that they're showing that they're a step up above some of these other teams, and hopefully over the rest of the season they can continue to kind of separate the number of wins that they have with some of these other teams. Now, the way some of these teams are kind of opting out of competing, it might be a little easier to do that, but still. That's not something you can control. I just want to see them continue to beat some of these teams that are not necessarily putting a huge foot forward and just showing that you shouldn't be mentioned among this group.
For sure.
Yeah, you don't want to play down to the level of competition. You want to make sure that you're still taking care of your business. And the way the game started, the Pelicans didn't have the best start. They were down 4 points after the first quarter, only scored 26 points. They bounced back, though, and outscored the Kings 41-33. And a lot of it was because of the bench.
Yeah.
This bench has been huge. You talk about Carlo Makovich and Bryce McGowan's, again, had a really nice game. You mentioned the 7 players in double figures. It's good to see the contributions from these bench players consistently.
Yeah. I mean, they know their role. They know what to expect when they come in. It's not a surprise to none of the bench guys coming in, regardless of how the first unit starts. Like, you want the bench players to give you a boost. And they've been doing that consistently. Like, we talked about the bench a lot. The bench points, the guys that come in. Bryce, of course, Carlo, as you mentioned. Being able to stretch the floor, and you have a different variety of ways to throw different lineups out there with our bench, and the depth of the team is something that really can push us over the edge. And like you're saying, like, we don't belong in the bottom because we have a lot of depth and a lot of talent. So, yeah, the schedule is unruly. It is what it is this past season. But for us to be able to go out there and can still fight and still get these wins, it says a lot about the team itself.
And some shameless self-promotion. I just wrote about Bryce McGowan's, about how he came into the NBA as a scorer, as a guy in college. That was his game. But he's branched out into so many other things. And I'm just so impressed with what he did in the Sacramento game, but also in these recent games, in terms of now he's blocking shots, he's dunking on people, he's getting contested rebounds. I think the biggest thing that he talked about to me was his defense, that he has to show that I'm a force at both ends of the floor. So, I mean, to me, you could point to a lot of reserves that played well against the Kings, but he was the one that stood out the most to me, just the fact that he's now doing some of these other things that aren't necessarily things you expect from a 2 guard or a wing player.
Right. I mean, that's That's the wave of the league, that 3-and-D type of player. And he has the intangibles to do that with his length, his size, so he can be disruptive on the defensive end. I like that he's taking that challenge of like, I need to go out here and play defense. That's going to get you on the floor. You've seen that with Peavy. He said, I'm going to put this as my calling card to get on the floor. He's been doing that. So Bryce, being a scorer, he plays right into his hands of getting downhill. That's the MO of us. Points in the paint. And he's been doing that. So adding more to his game is going to continue to increase his minutes, and been loving his production.
42 points in the paint in the first half by the Pelicans. That was huge. I mean, the 3-point shot wasn't falling. It did. As the game went on, they ended up with 9 second-half threes, 11 block shots. You're seeing the length and that rim protection really stand out a lot on this team, and that was something that Borrego was harping on early in the season, the rebounding and that aspect of protecting the paint. When you go back to the Lakers game, every single player was healthy. The rotations, the lineups, that's what I was so intrigued to watch. What stood out to you there?
Yeah, the lineups, the rotations of that it gets funky. Yeah, because you have a lot of players, you got a lot of different ways to go in and throw different people out there. The chemistry can get thrown off a bit, especially when you're going against a team that's fighting for seeding in the playoffs. So they already are locked in on what they need to do. So for us still trying to figure something out on the fly, that's tough, especially dealing with a team that's veteran, proven with LeBron and with Luka and these guys. So that being said, you see guys not being able to play within themselves, like the DQs. And Jeremiah had a good game, but you look at DeJounte being out there now. You see Trey being out there. So you see guys trying to play within themselves, but the lineups and the chemistry gets thrown off, especially when you're on the road trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah, and the Lakers were fully healthy too. So there were moments in that game where the Pelicans went toe-to-toe just fine with the Lakers and looked really good.
For
so
sure.
You see the talent that this team does have.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, even though obviously the Sacramento game was a win and the Lakers game was a loss, to me, I took a lot more out of the Laker game from the fact that it was more what you want to see in terms of everyone available. DeJounte with Trey and Zion. I think that was the first time that they had all three of those guys together. And you're up 8 with like 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Right. So to me, to that point of the game, I was very pleased because I thought they're showing more of what they're capable, what their potential is when they have everyone available. Now, obviously, the latter part of the fourth quarter didn't go well.
Right.
But I mean, it was definitely one of those things where it was an entertaining game. I thought it was a lot of fun and just something that you can kind of maybe look at more in terms of next season than what happened in the Sacramento game. So, but one of the things that you said, Wes, that I wanted to point out too is the with DeJounte now, the last few, they still have a few more back-to-backs where maybe he won't play in both games, but he'll play one. So you're alternating back and forth with lineups. And so, I mean, that is a challenge, but I also think that I wonder if there's some value to that because you're able to try a bunch of different combinations. And again, in terms of next season, or this offseason, what you're going to do. One of the things that stood out to me too, just kind of on paper, is I don't know if I've ever seen a player like officially in the box score. I know they list 2 guards, a center, and 2 forwards, but realistically, Herb Jones was the starting point guard in a game, and then the next game he was a center.
Right.
So I'm not sure if I've ever seen a team do that before, but just as an example of that, it really is becoming like positionless basketball where he's kind of just filling whatever spot that he can based on who else is available.
I mean, that's the versatility of the league. That's the versatility of this team. Like you're saying, the lineups going back and forth with DeJounte in and out, and you're looking at it as the small lineup that they threw out against the Lakers. That was a scary lineup, regardless of who you're going to play. If you have all those guys on the floor, as far as switching, as far as being on the floor, on the fly, anybody can grab the rebound and push you. Her playing the point guard, making decisions, and then you have DeJounte, you have Zion, you have Trey. So naming all these players and naming how they can play, if they get more games and more practices, more everything under their belt, it's a scary lineup because now who you guarding, who you helping off of. Now you got floor space, and now you got like the floor generalship as far as DeJounte and Herb and Zion. So it's fun. I mean, regardless of how many games left and the season's winding down, but you see the promise in the team.
And I enjoyed the element of just putting your best 5 players out there.
For sure.
Obviously, the Pelicans want to win as many games as possible. We want to see them win as much as possible. But, I mean, it's fun to just see that. And it also is – it's not super high stakes. Like, it's not the end of the world if you lose a game or if you try different lineups just to see what you can get out of them. So I enjoyed that part of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Definitely going to be difficult to game plan for the Pelicans when they're fully healthy. Yeah. On the other side of the break here, we're going to get Wes's thoughts on a few players, break down their games of late. So stick with us right here on the New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Welcome back to the New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Erin Summers, Wes Johnson, Jim Eichenhofer. Thank you for joining us today. Wes, former player, played around a lot of different players, obviously vets, rookies, different ages. So let's start with the rookies, because coming in as a rookie point guard has got to be one of the most difficult things to do. Jeremiah Fears, though, of late, coming off the bench, seems like he has really settled into his game.
Yeah.
What have you liked about his improvements?
I think he's taking what the defense is giving him. I think he's seeing how he can be effective. I think when he was in the starting lineup, he still had his spurts of where he was effective. But I think now he's able to watch the game and let the game come to him. Seeing him being able to get into the paint, kick it out. Before, that was a shot. And you were like, okay, wish you would have passed it out. That was a tough shot to take over a couple hands. So now he's seeing the floor open up. Now he's letting the defense really, they're giving him the answers. He's fast enough to get into the paint and really collapse it. Now the easy play is to kick out. Sometimes you can drive. So I think the growth in him coming off the bench was a smart move, because now he's actually seeing how he can be effective, and he's been playing great as of late, especially coming off the bench.
One of the things that James Borrego has talked about throughout the season is rim decisions, and it feels like sometimes that he's referring to Jeremiah Fears in terms of he's still learning how to, you're 6'3", 6'4", you're getting into the paint. Sometimes you're always going against more athleticism than you did in college. So that's an interesting part of what you have to learn. One of the stats I had from him that I thought was really interesting is he's had 14 games of 5+ assists this season, but he has 6 of those in the last 9 games. So since February 11th, which is the game right before the All-Star break, he has almost as many games of 5+ assists since then than he did the previous 50-something games. So, I mean, how much of that have you seen in terms of just, I know people always use the term the game slowing down for someone, but do you see that a lot with him? It's like he's just more under control, maybe just more not just playing his pace, basically.
Yeah, I think you said it right. I think he's under control, because you see him start flying up the floor, and it's like, oh my God, slow down. Because he'll get to the paint and he'll throw up a layup. And it's like, if he would have slowed down, then you would have seen the slow break happen. And guys are trickling in. You can see the skip pass to the corner. You can see the trail big coming in. You see him playing the pick and roll. Now, that was my thing for him, the pick and roll. You have the speed and the pace to be able to throw defenses off balance, especially playing in the pick and roll. He had a nice lob to Carlo coming off the pick and roll. So you see him looking for guys now. Now I can see the guys cutting. I can see the guy's space. When I don't have it, he's fast enough, crafty enough to get his own shot. So I think that's the patience that we're seeing the second half of the season, which is only going to get better because he's 19. Yeah, so it's a huge upside.
A point guard that I'm sure it helps to watch is DeJounte Murray.
Yeah.
And now that he is back in the lineup, he is having 6 assists per game on average, which is huge for this team, and dictating the offense, moving the ball a little bit, seeing somebody that thinks to do that first at all times. What have you seen from his impact?
I don't think he missed a step. I don't think he missed a beat. He came in and hit the ground running. I think the hunger, I think all the stuff that he was battling off the court, the preparation to get back on the court, I think now he's able to be back out there with guys that have actually blossomed while he was sitting out. Trey has blossomed. Z has a whole different mindset on the floor, being out there consistently. So being able to play alongside those guys, and Herb is being like that point forward, those guys that know how to do spacing, and then the system that they're playing in. It's a free-flowing offense to get up and down. Whoever has its space, if you have it, move it, and you see the ball moving, and a promise when they play like that. But DeJounte being back, I mean, he's a floor general. He's a vet. He's been around. He's been around multiple offenses and seen defensive schemes thrown at him. So he's able to dictate how he needs to dictate, because he's one of those vets and floor generals that we need on the floor.
Erin mentioned the 6 assists per game, and I think it's important to point out, too, that he's only playing 25 minutes a game. So he's not playing 35 minutes in that like starter number because he's just obviously coming back from being out for a year or so. You know, one of the things just overall about the team that I wanted to point out and tie it to DeJounte and Jeremiah Fears too is they started 10-36 this season. They're 10-8 since then. So, I mean, they have just as many wins in the last 18 games as they did in the first 46. So as people hear us talk about like some of the positive things that have happened, you look at the record overall and you're just like, why are they talking about positive? But I mean, I do think over this last couple months stretch, they've played a lot better basketball. The defense, I think, still needs to get better, but the offense, I think, has definitely made strides. And how much of that have you seen in recent weeks, or I guess this recent stretch where now Jeremiah's playing better, more savvy, like sound point guard play, and then DeJounte as well. A lot of times it feels like you need to have him in the game because he just is kind of that calming presence. Yeah. So, I mean, how much of you think is just that's adding to now you have two guys that you can really rely on at point guard?
It's comforting. Now you have your floor general, the guy that calms the storm whenever we're going, being helter-skelter, running around. So you got him being able to do his thing. Then you throw Jeremiah in, he brings a different dynamic to the lineup. The speed, the pace that he plays at is so dynamic that it causes defenses to have to load and try to scheme towards his speed. Once he continues to learn that, like I'm my own offense, he can get a rebound and push it, then it really gets scary to the fact that how are we going to slow him down? If you look at the John Wall, the Russells, the D Roses, all those guys that had that super speed, you had to load, and now you have guys like Trey that's running on the wing. You have Bryce that's finding his own footing in the lineup. Then you get that running, and then you put DeJounte back in. Now you have the Z's and the Treys around him. So now it's like throwing defense into making people have to think. A lot of people don't want to think on defense in the NBA. So if you're having that, it plays into our favor.
Speaking of calming presence and somebody you can just count on every single game, Saddiq Bey. I mean, honestly, we've talked about him numerous times this year. Right. But last night I was thinking, what would our 3-point percentage look like without him on the floor?
Ooh, let's not think about that.
I know.
Because we didn't know what he was going to bring this season.
Right.
And to have him be what he's been, it has been huge for this team.
It's unreal. He's the professional. Like, he's Mr. Classic. He comes in, he does what he needs to do. You know what you're going to get. Sometimes he supersedes that. We're like, okay, we know he's going to calm us down first. He post up, big three, defensive stop, rebound, but then you look up, he has 40. And it's like, oh my God, okay, he's adding that for us too. So adding that to all the players that we named and talked about, and then you have a guy like that on your in your lineup, and then look at the history of this past couple of years, him being injured, now he's back playing, says a lot about him.
You haven't been out of the NBA that long. In fact, it wasn't even that long ago that you played here.
Right.
But how much has it changed from when you see a guy like Saddiq post up? It's like, is he trying to single-handedly bring the post up back into the league?
I hope so, because that's a different skill set. Because you think of the league now that's run and shoot threes or try to get to the rim. Now you're slowing the game down. Now you're making guys actually play defense and rotate out of the defense. So if you look at the guys that do post up, the Jokers, the KDs, and all those, the Lukas and LeBrons, like, it's a lost art. Mm-hmm. And him being able to do that and bring that back, it causes a lot of confusion. So it helps us out.
Yeah, he hit some big shots last night and definitely helped make the Kings play us differently defensively because they had to spread out a little bit. All right, on the other side, we're going to preview what's next for the Pelicans. So stick with us after this timeout. Welcome back to the New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Next up for the Pelicans, one final game on this road trip. They are at Phoenix, ending this back-to-back, and then they'll be back in New Orleans Sunday against the Wizards. So let's start with the Suns. They're coming off a loss last night to Chicago, 105-103. They've added Jalen Green since we've seen them. So how does that impact what we should anticipate tonight?
Another scorer, very dynamic and getting going, super athletic. They like to shoot a lot of threes. They get out there defensively, but adding him is another defensive focal point that we have to lean towards. They're going to be tough, and they're fighting for a secure spot in like the top 6. So you're going to be a hungry team. And then coming off a loss, they're going to try to bounce back. They're probably looking at us, we can get this win. So for us, we got to be spoilers. We don't want them to be secure in anything because we're still trying to prove ourselves. So that being said, like he's one of those players that we have to lock in on.
I think Friday's game is a big mental challenge from the standpoint of that you've been on the road for a long time, and none of us played a minute last night. But for me personally, I felt like this was one of those moments.
Are you tired, Jim?
Oh, no, that's not what I was going to say. I was going to say more that this is one of the most times all season that I've been like, oh yeah, they have a game again tonight. It's kind of like it comes fast. So I'm sure they're looking forward to coming back home. And they're playing, and maybe even more to the point, they're playing against a team that is super hungry and plays pretty ferocious basketball, intense basketball. I think that's one of the reasons why they've been one of the biggest turnaround teams in the whole league this season. But you mentioned Jalen Green is available now. There's a couple players that aren't available for the Suns that I think are a factor that's going to make the game Friday probably look a little bit different from when they played them the 3 previous times. Jose Alvarado's best friend, Mark Williams, is out with an injury right now, so he's not going to play. And I think he did some damage even beyond the fighting against the Pelicans earlier in the season. Dylan Brooks is out, obviously. Jordan Goodwin didn't play last night, and I think he's been an underrated player. I'm not sure what his status is for Friday's game, but just a few guys that I think their look is a little bit different from what we saw earlier in the season.
Yeah, they're not going to be as annoying because Dylan Brooks is not on the court.
Right.
When you look at the Wizards, they have also added somebody with the return of Trae Young in their last game. He only played 19 minutes restriction for him, but he was pretty effective there. So again, with the Wizards, what are they going to look like?
I think it's similar. I mean, you're adding Trae. I mean, you know what he brings. He's going to bring the flair, the outside shooting. But for us, if we see that, okay, yeah, he does that, but he has to guard us. We had to make him guard. He's smaller, and we are very effective driving the ball, so putting him in situations where he has to play defense. So 2 different, totally different games, but for us, I think we should take care of business. We had good momentum going, especially on this road.
I'm a little confused by what the Wizards are doing in terms of their playing time. I'm sure you could probably say that about a lot of teams right now, but there's some guys like Bub Carrington who started earlier in the season, played a ton lately. You're seeing like 15 minutes in some games, and they have a couple players that either weren't on the team at all or barely played, and now they're starting. And just, by the way, to a random note, one of Derek Queen's college teammates, Julian Reese, is starting for the Wizards at center in the last couple of games. He's had some really good games. He had like a 20 and 15 game.
Yeah.
He's also the brother of Angel Reese.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what her itinerary is, but maybe we'll see her at the game Sunday. I saw she was at a game the other night in his jersey, in her brother's jersey.
Yeah.
I think it might have been his first game or his second game in the NBA. So
also the cousin of Jordan Hawkins.
Right. A lot of family connections here.
Yeah.
A lot. I didn't know that was his cousin. Wow, okay. But no, he had a good game. He had a really good game. So rebounding, that was his thing. He had a really good game. So I'm interested to see that. Old teammates, college teammates going against each other. Yeah, so it'd be fun.
The Pelicans have been a lot of fun to watch at this point in the season, despite where they are in the standings and their record. They've been doing some really good things. So hopefully we can end this road trip on a high note. What's your biggest overall key, Wes?
Overall key, I think to continue the ball movement. I think that is always going to be number one by default, ball movement, because once you move the ball, it answers everything and opens up all what you need to see and do. So ball movement.
All right. Got to move the ball tonight to get the win against the Suns and Sunday against the Wizards. Hopefully we'll see you guys out at the Smoothie King Center. It's a 6:00 game, and it is the Barbie theme night, which Wes is extremely excited about. Thanks so much for joining us on the New Orleans Pelicans podcast. For Wes Johnson, Jim Eichenhofer, I'm Erin Summers. See you at a game soon.